Welcome to the Small Church Podcast, where faith, community, and ministry intersect in the unique context of smaller congregations. I'm your host, Tony Marr, and I'm thrilled to be joined by two men who are convinced they're a little bit more talented than I am.
That is right. I'm Robert Kell, one of those supposedly more talented guys, co-host and fellow small church leader. Together, we're here to explore the challenges, triumphs, and inspiring stories within the tight-knit communities that make up our smaller churches.
And I'm Bruce Montgomery, the one here to bring even more to the table than these two and offer a unique perspective to our conversation.
So whether you believe this talent hierarchy or not, you're in for a treat. If you're a pastor, a church member, or just curious about the world of leadership, you're in the right place.
Each episode, we dive into topics that matter to you, from innovative ministry ideas to navigating the unique dynamics of a smaller congregation.
So grab your cup of coffee, settle in, and let's journey together through the wonderful tapestry of small church life.
This is the Small Church Podcast.
Robert, today has been a long day coming, a long time coming.
I'm going to be honest, we just talked about this to be a minute. I'm going, what are we talking about?
We have been, the topic that we're tackling today, attempting to tackle today. Last week, we thought we were going to tackle it, and then we got off on a different subject that took an hour and 8 minutes. That was after editing, hour and 8 minutes. And then the week before that, we were hoping to do this topic. And the week before that, we had two topics that we were looking at, and this one got shelved. So 4 weeks now, we've been attempting to talk on this, and I think that we're finally going to get around to it. And it's very, I think, timely, because you just taught on this topic this past Sunday.
I did.
And so maybe it was the Lord saying, let's wait till Robert does a little bit more
Robert
research
knows what
on
he's
this,
talking about.
and you guys can sound a little bit more educated and informed than you would have a month ago. It's a topic that no one ever wants to talk about, but it's something that is critical to small churches. I think that it is something that most pastors push to the side time and time again when it comes to teaching on, communicating about, because it's just uncomfortable a lot of times. And we left, my wife and I were at your church this past Sunday with a row full of our kids. And we left and we were kind of talking about it a little bit afterwards with my kids. And my daughter said she thought you did a really good job, and said, that's a hard thing to teach on. And I said, yeah, it's very tough. And I thought that it was interesting that a 18-year-old picked up on that's a really difficult subject to teach on.
You know, and I think I said this at the beginning of the sermon, like the thing that's hard about a lot of what we do as pastors, preachers, teachers of scripture and working through those things is that if you believe what the Bible says, it's true and it doesn't change. So what's supposed to be changing as we read the scriptures is us. And when you're teaching on a topic, regardless of what it is, it's something that people have probably heard before, because at the end of the day, I mean, you know, we all, you know, we're teaching the life of Jesus and, you know, what he did to connect us to the Father, and how our world should be to live like Jesus, so that we honor the Father the way Jesus did. And so it gets pretty lean. Even if you teach verse by verse exegetically, it gets pretty lean in the number of things you're probably going to talk about throughout a year. And so you're saying a lot of the same things over and over and over. You teach and preach and live kind of in a space, whether it's from a pulpit or a Sunday school class or wherever that is. You're going to, if you're at a place for a while, 4 or 5 years, I mean, people hear about every story you've got. I mean, most of us aren't that interesting. And so you're starting to repeat things. You're starting to move through stuff. You're starting to hear, and they're going to hear. And this topic is one that I think probably at least every year you're going to give it a couple of weeks. And it's just complicated to look at people and go, I know you've heard this before. And if all of you were doing it, I don't know that I would teach on it. And I mean, I didn't say that,
which is real, but really, probably could have and should have been said. If we were all practicing this the way that we should be, there would be no need to teach on it, and we could all avoid this awkwardness.
Yeah.
But you're not, so we need to, because it is a spiritual discipline. It is something that I think is a metric that we have of how we're doing in our spiritual health.
I wish we were live right now so we could say, okay, now guess what we're talking about.
Well, we've teased it really well, and we're going to tease it a little further. And I'm just thinking what our listeners we know what we're going to talk about, and our listeners have no idea. I think maybe some of them are saying, especially those who've been in ministry a long time, that I know exactly what you're talking about.
Word.
Others are thinking, where are we going with this? And so that's going to be fun. We're going to tease it out just a little bit longer because how are you doing?
I'm good. We time things a little bit. We're on the other side of the Olympics, which I really enjoyed. So you're a Lakers fan.
I'm a huge Lakers fan.
Are you a LeBron fan?
I'm not a LeBron fan.
Okay, I'm not either. And did we talk about this last week on the podcast?
We didn't at all.
So I am not a LeBron fan, and I'm not a fan of LeBron's leadership for the most part. What I am a fan of is LeBron's what seems to be, and man, I'm such a 10,000 foot would put me way closer to him than I actually am in any way, shape, or form. But from a 10,000 foot view, he just seems like literally married his high school sweetheart, pretty young age. He's never been in any type of drama and stuff like that. I just
never had any controversy.
None. I mean, like really, when it comes to just life now on the court and things that happen around basketball, on and off the court, I think he's been
the decision.
Yeah. Those types. I'd call that an off-court decision or off-court situation that led to some stuff. And so I think, give me
that wasn't a moral failure.
No. This is all basketball. Yeah. So like I have no qualms with his life. And and people gave him a ton of just heat over doing Space Jam 2. I actually gained a lot of respect for him and his kids and his wife doing Space Jam. And I thought it was super cool and I enjoyed it. And I kind of endeared me to LeBron just a little bit.
I thought the movie was horrible.
I don't think the movie was good. I'm just talking about him and his interaction with his kids and things. He's not that good of an actor, so he couldn't fake that. And I just thought it was very whimsical, very fine. It was fine. It was terrible when compared to the first one. And it has nothing to do with Michael and LeBron. It was just the first movie was a better movie.
We'll do a whole nother podcast.
We should. We should totally do that. But I watched several of the men's basketball games, and people are going nuts at the end going, Steph Curry should have gotten the MVP. Steph should have gotten the MVP. And I had looked at a couple of friends of mine going into that weekend and said, I have never seen someone put a team on their back the way LeBron James has. And if the MVP is what I understand it to be, the entire Olympic run, LeBron James carried. I mean, I watched moments where I'm going, well, this was fun. We are getting ready to get trounced by, I don't know, whoever. I mean, whatever team we were playing. I mean, Angola, who has no NBA players and they're lucky to make the Olympics. It was just not just a bad situation. And LeBron would just take the ball and drive and dunk on people. I'm going, you're 40 years old, dude. I mean, you are an absolute monster, and people complaining about his gray beard, and I'm going, he's 40 years old. I've had gray in my beard since I was 35. I mean, it was like this just a lot of things that didn't make a ton of sense. But I am so not a LeBron fan, and I would be just so upset if the Celtics ever picked him up. But especially with the only reason to pick him up now means we'd have gotten Bronny, which I think is the biggest joke in the world. But LeBron was so stinking good. He just led well. I loved how he led that space. He is kind of the Phil Jackson of players. He is way better. He's one of the best managers of superstars on a court I have ever seen. And people really respect him inside the boundaries of that court. And they play that way.
Yeah, you and I don't agree on much when it comes to sports, but that's something that we completely agree on.
That we don't like LeBron?
Well, and everything that you just said, I am as big of a Lakers fan that I am, and been a Lakers fan since my earliest days. I was at the game when Kareem Abdul-Jabbar broke the all-time scoring record. I do not remember it because I think I was like 3 years old, but I was there. My dad took me to the game, still have the ticket stub from that game. I've been a Lakers fan, devout Lakers fan my entire life, and I am not a LeBron fan. I was not happy when we brought him in, but I hope that JJ Redick and the front office of the Lakers were watching the Olympics and saw the way that when utilized the correct way, that he can carry a team. He and AD both. I think that Steph was the MVP for the last 2 games.
Yes.
But
apparently his wife was the MVP because she hadn't been at like the first few games.
The first 4 games.
And then the last 2 games, she was there and he scores like 35 points.
And I love Steph Curry.
Oh, yeah.
He's probably my favorite modern day player in the NBA. Very disappointed in his new show, Mr. Throwback.
Okay, I started watching that the other day, and I checked IMDb and some stuff, and I had looked through, and I thought, okay, there doesn't seem to be anything in here. And so me and a couple of my boys and my wife sat down, and we started clicking through because they love, especially my youngest, he's 16 and loves Steph Curry, his favorite basketball player, loves him. And we got like 8 minutes into the show, and I said, guys, I'm so sorry. And like, yeah, it was just, and it wasn't anything. It was just words and verbiage.
The language was horrible. And I was so disappointed in it because same thing. We love Steph. He's so outspoken about his faith. He's done so many things in the space of the faith community that thought this is going to be great. And we sat down to watch it. And same thing. We didn't even make it through the first episode, was blown away by the language. But when you're expecting something from someone, when you're expecting a certain level out of someone based on what they've shown you with their character in the past, I think that was pretty disappointing.
Yeah, and I'd say for us, a little bit of this transition and change has been more of a, like, what should we be consuming? And so I think there's some changes for us that's there. And also, too, like, I'll even compare it to Ted Lasso. Like, if you compare, you got Peacock versus Apple TV. There's some different things there. I'm not sure what studios they both came out of, but like it's one of those things that Lasso, the language was very much like a sports locker room. So it wasn't everything with this new show that Steph's in. I just went blank on the name of it.
Mr. Throwback.
There you go. That's like Mr. Incredible. Nope, that's the wrong thing. But Mr. Throwback versus Ted Lasso, the Mr. Throwback thing, like, it was very sexual. Very just every off remark, everything was something that was very like, at times I'm going, even with 16 to 17-year-old boys sitting there, I'm going, they may not know what that means. It was just really, really, really weird types of lingo and conversations and stuff like that. And then there was some stuff that was being said. I'm going, what is that phrase? I mean, so like, I was in the same boat going, I don't know what some of those phrases mean because it's current trendy kind of words. And so, yeah, it was weird. I think that one of the tensions I have, man, and then we need to get back to something else, but probably anything else. That is my struggle with media and culture inside of film, TV, music, and all of these things, is that I'm not saying me and you, I'm saying collectively, I think we treat media as mindless. And so we sit down and we go, oh, hey, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to watch a TV show today. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to do this. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to work through this. And the reality just comes down to is that media was never intended to be mindless. It's always had a purpose. One of the major streaming services, their CEO at the time said, we know the content we create shapes culture, and we will continue creating that content until culture reflects what we think it should. And as believers, we walk in then and we sit down. And I said this a few Sundays ago. I still haven't started watching Friends again since Matthew Perry died. I loved him in that show. He was the character I connected to. I've always been Monica over Rachel. All of those things, like, that was just that was a show. But like, you look at that, you look at all these other shows we watch, and we start to invest and we treat them like they're family and they become a part of our life. But yet 90%, if not more, of what they do moves almost in direct opposition. And I'm not saying those people, this is an exact LeBron James conversation. I'm not saying LeBron's personal character. I'm not saying, Matthew Perry or Courtney Cox or, Jennifer Aniston, whoever. I'm not saying their personal character. I'm saying the character on the show. And that's who we identify with, because we don't know those people from Adam's House Cat. We engage and love and laugh and move in a space that moves in direct opposition, many times in public, like, degrading of Christianity and a life of Jesus, and we just laugh and we think it's funny and we're okay with it. And I think that's one of the biggest struggles in media today. So anyway, back to the Steph thing. I love him. I think he's great. There's been some moments in time, and look, you could say a million things about me. I mean, I've said things and done stuff and been in spaces where I've not modeled Jesus as well as I should. And I know it's sanctification.
But you don't have a camera on you 24/7. Like
thankfully, no.
Yeah.
But I mean, I know it's affected, and I'm affecting a smaller sampling of people, definitely, when I do some of the stuff that I do.
Yeah. I think on a larger scale, the Olympics as a whole, and we're really kind of diving into pastor's picks here. The Olympics as a whole came to a close a couple of days ago. I thoroughly enjoy the Olympics.
Yes, so much.
Those 2 weeks. And I know there was all sorts of controversy surrounding the opening ceremonies and boxers.
And you and I aren't smart enough
bronze medals
or
from
aware
the
enough
gymnasts
to even speak to all that. Yeah.
The heart of the games and the stories of perseverance and just the human spirit that comes out. Oh, man, I love it. And it's a mourning time for me when it's over.
Sad.
Yeah.
So what was your favorite event in the Olympics?
I really enjoy the swimming. I
Okay.
think the swimming's a lot of fun. Of course, my son is completely into basketball, so we watched all of the basketball games from the USA team, and that was a lot of fun seeing that collection of talent all together on one team. I thought was pretty remarkable. Loved it. There were some of the storylines that came just from within the basketball team with Jason Tatum and playing time and Tyrese Halliburton and not getting a foot off the bench, which I loved. Did you see his Instagram post afterwards?
when you don't do any work on the project but still get an A.
Yeah. I loved it.
That was funny.
Thought that was a brilliant way to handle that.
All he did was show up and he stayed quiet and did his job. I mean, and Jason's an NBA champion. I mean, high level player. I could see him probably being a little more frustrated. Like Joel Embiid looks so out of place. I mean, he looked slow. The game, Jokic is his contemporary in the NBA. One of my kids, said, "Hey, I heard that the Celtics going to pick up Embiid," and I said, "I may no longer be a Celtics fan." I said, "Who are we giving up?" I said, "That's the dumbest trade I've ever heard in my life. The guy can't stay healthy." But no, I agree with you. It was that was funny. That was really good. What was a surprise thing? So I love swimming. We love the gymnastic stuff. I think this year probably my favorite was watching the track and field. And I
loved the track and field.
I loved the 100, 200, 400, and then the relays, and especially kind of that Friday, Saturday when we had the 4x400 men's and women's relays. I think it was Saturday afternoon, both in the same day. Loved that so much. That was really a good day. But what was like a surprise thing, like a sport that you don't normally get to see that feels way more Olympic than just, oh, hey, these things happen at colleges all the time?
I loved seeing the reaction from some professional athletes. Scotty Scheffler winning. He's won millions upon millions of dollars playing golf. And to see the emotion when he wins a gold medal in the Olympics, not getting paid, what, $34,000, I think is what the United States Olympic Committee. I mean, he makes that showing up at the putting green, more than that showing up at the putting green. And to see the emotion on his face, same with, was it Novik, who won the tennis.
Oh yeah.
Djokovic, who won the tennis gold medal, won countless major championships and, tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, and the pride that came, the overwhelming emotion that happened in those moments. I loved that. I got caught up in watching water polo. I thought water polo was so much fascinating.
I was so frustrated. Water polo and indoor volleyball. I got really connected to those. And my favorite moments were probably in the team fencing events. And there was one point in time that there was, I think 2.4 seconds, and somebody had to get they had to score by themselves to tie the match up and send it into overtime. And they literally, in 2.4 seconds, I mean, it goes off. You think maybe it's 1.424. It was so fast. And it was just, 1,000, and they scored right as the time went out. And then it went to overtime and their team ended up winning. And it's just crazy how literally last seconds so much. It feels very much like March Madness. It's just so much happens in those 2 weeks of
there
the
was
Olympics.
The bronze medal men's wrestling match that we had, a guy from the United States that had just lost his dad. And he was going against a guy from, I think it was Serbia that he was going against. And there was less than 45 seconds left and he was losing 4-1. And his coach called timeout and brought him over. And the analysts and commentators are saying this is over. There's 45 seconds left. He's down 4-1. I think they actually challenged something and lost the challenge. And they're just saying, yeah, he gave it a good run. He was the gold medal favorite. He won bronze in the last Olympics, and this is going to be such a disappointment for him. He came out and was a lion and ended up winning 10-4, scored 9 points. And I don't know much about wrestling and how the scoring system works and all that. But he scored 9 points in the last 40 seconds of the match and just was a beast and overwhelmed the guy. And then to see the emotion, I loved it. I don't understand steeplechase. He talking about track and field, watched a little steeplechase, don't get it. Who invented that? And then I heard some of the history that it actually came from, they would do these races from steeple to steeple. So from church to church, and you would be running through the woods, going from church to church, from steeple to steeple.
That's interesting.
You were literally chasing the steeple, and you would run through rivers and have to jump over logs and all this kind of stuff. And so then they brought it and put it in a stadium, in a track, and have to jump over a beam and go through a puddle of water. And I didn't get it at all, but it was fun. Question I have for you that I've talked about with my family, and we've debated this for the last several days. Did you watch the high jump final?
Yes.
So you have the American guy, and then I think it was Netherlands.
Yes.
I think that they tied. They tie. They get to the place. Neither one of them, 3 attempts. They can't get over this bar, and so they have a choice to make that they get to choose. They can either share the gold medal, or they can keep going until one person wins and one person loses. This happened in the previous Olympics, and the two decided to share the gold medal, and so they both won golds. These two, the American and the athlete from the Netherlands, decided no, they wanted to keep competing. And so it went on and on and on. They kept lowering the bar because they're tired. They kept lowering the bar until finally the guy from Netherlands wins.
Won, yeah.
And so the U.S. athlete takes the silver. And given that choice, what are you choosing? Are you choosing to keep competing and risk getting the silver medal instead of the gold? Or are you walking away saying, no, we've both made it to here. We've tied this thing. Let's both get a gold medal.
Okay, gold and silver, I'm competing for sure. I think the harder question comes if it's a medal or nothing. And so that would be interesting. Are you okay going home with nothing? And but yeah, I'm competing absolutely in that situation. Just what you ask, I'm absolutely competing. I'm like, hey, that was fun. You can go home if you want, but I'm doing this thing.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with you. Yep, I'm in complete agreement with you. I think that it's much different if we're sharing a bronze or we're risking going home with nothing.
Yeah. So it was good. I love those things. I love the Olympics. I love March Madness.
I thought they did a great job with closing ceremonies. I know there was so much controversy behind opening ceremonies. I was not a fan of opening ceremonies.
Yeah, I wasn't either.
For all the reasons that have been shared, and then so much more. Mm-hmm. I just think they took away there were so many people, and we actually wrote up an entire episode of the
talked
podcast
about talking about
it, and we did a whole episode on it and decided not to do it because
we wrote it up. We actually never discussed the episode.
Yeah,
we never recorded anything.
But I felt like with the opening ceremonies, the thing that bothered me most was the stories you heard of people that had planned for this their whole life. They wanted to be in an opening ceremony, and they had traveled there from around the world, spent hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars on tickets to be at opening ceremonies, and then they didn't experience anything. There was nothing there. You would have done better just putting your lawn chair out on the banks of the river and watching everything come by. There was no spectacle inside of the stadium. And so that really bothered me for those people. And then you factor in the weather, and I've led lots of people that said, we left we just left because after 2.5 hours, we realized we're not seeing anything, and we're getting soaked here. So they just left and went home and were upset about it. What was supposed to be a highlight of their life turned into a great disappointment. But I thought, in contrast, the closing ceremonies, I thought they did a great job with that. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was the way that it seemed.
That was on a Sunday, I think. I didn't
it was
really
on a
see.
Sunday evening.
Yeah, we had a lot that was moving through that day, so I didn't catch that. But no, it was good.
Already making plans to see how we can get to LA in 4 years. I think that would be a dream. I graduated from high school in 1996, and when I graduated, my parents gave me the choice, me and my friends the choice, in doing a senior trip. They said, we will pay for you to go to Atlanta and spend a week in Atlanta for the Summer Olympics if you want to go. And me and my friends decided to go to Maui, Hawaii instead. And as much of a great time as we had in Hawaii, I regret not doing that. And so I'm trying to figure out how I can save enough money in the next 4 years and convince my family that our summer vacation needs to be to go fight the crowds in Los Angeles in 2028.
Yeah, that would be a lot. So, yeah.
Hey, we've now spent 27 minutes of an intro to this show.
There we go.
You think anybody's still listening?
I don't know. I think the Olympics are interesting.
Pretty interesting.
And I think, so we'll move into our topic now, though.
So now our topic is, drum roll, please. We are talking about church finances and giving.
Yeah, we are.
It's a hot button topic. It's a taboo topic. It's something that we don't like to talk about a lot, but it's something that is quite literally critical to the life and the health of any church, regardless of size. And because we are talking about church finances and giving, which is definitely now going to turn into a 2-part episode, I think, because we are 30 minutes into this and we haven't even broached the subject. But it is a great time to let all of our listeners out there know that we don't shy away from it, that our show is brought to you by Higher Ministries. Higher Ministries is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that provides coaching and consulting services for churches and their leaders. And most of the work that we do is done completely for free. All of the coaching that we do is done completely for free. A lot of the work that we do with churches is done either for free or at greatly reduced costs. And I get asked all the time, how does Higher Ministries pay for this stuff? How does your support come? And while most of our support comes from churches, that we are partner with larger churches who believe in the mission that we're doing of helping smaller churches and their leaders to better equip them to expand the kingdom of God here on earth by helping them solidify their mission, vision, values, strategy, all of that fun stuff. And so that's a majority. We also have individuals who support the ministry. They believe in what we're doing, and so they give. And then once a year, we do what we call the All for One campaign. The All for One campaign is pretty straightforward. And it is that we are looking for, over the period of 100 days, and we started this August 1st, and we're going through the end of October, which October is Clergy Appreciation Month, Pastor Appreciation Month, that over those 100 days from August to November, we are looking for 100 people, 100 individuals, churches, families, 100 people that will make a one-time gift of $100. One-time gift of $100. We're not asking you to sign up to support the ministry every month for the rest of your life. We're not asking you to give some extravagant amount. I know that $100 is a lot of money, and it's a lot of money for a lot of people. But it's a one-time thing that we're asking you, one-time gift of $100. And if you're a listener of the show and you value what we're doing, it would mean a lot to us if you would consider being a part of the All for One campaign. You can go to higherministries.com and find out more about that. You can give right online through our online giving module there. And if you're a church that's in the vicinity of the East Tennessee area, would love to come and talk to your church about what we're doing. talk to your missions or benevolence team, whatever that would fall under, and talk to your people and share the vision, mission of what we're doing. If you need a Sunday off, myself or one of our team would love to come and fill the pulpit for you and maybe share a little bit about our ministry and give people in your congregation an opportunity to participate in the All for One campaign. Another thing that we're doing with the All for One campaign, because this is the first time that we really talked about it a lot on the show, is if you're not a pastor, or even if you are a pastor and you want to do this in honor of yourself, as we go into Pastor Appreciation Month, if you want to make your gift to the All for One campaign in honor of your pastor, then when we get into the month of October, we're going to spend some time each episode just kind of recognizing those people that were honored by someone in their church, or like I said, maybe you just want to honor yourself. There will be no shame, no guilt. We won't say who the gift came from. And so we won't say Robert K. made a gift in honor of Robert K. We won't do that. But we would love to share the love that you have for your pastor, maybe someone on your church leadership team, if you wanted to give in honor of that. So we'll be talking about that a lot more over the coming weeks and months. Not something we're going to overwhelm you with, but it would make a huge difference in our ability to continue to provide services for smaller churches and their leaders. It's something that is greatly needed, and we've seen that through the response that we've seen to this show. And yeah, we would invite you and welcome you to partner with us in that. Again, the All for One campaign, you can go to higherministries.com, HIGHER ministries.com, and just follow the links on the homepage, All for One campaign, to find out more about that and participate in that. And we would love for you to be a part of that. So, commercial over.
Yeah, no, those things are so important, and we don't do that a lot, and really ever. And so that's
first time that we've ever asked for your money on an episode that we're talking about money.
Yeah, and I think too, I mean, it's more of a, hey, if you can, that's fantastic. If you can't, just, be praying. I mean, there's people that can, and we love what we get to do. Tony, you do a little more of the week in, week out networking and sitting with leaders and people and helping churches in that space. And it's just something that if this has been a benefit to you, maybe somebody that could help with that, and that's a big deal. So,
yeah. All right. So we're going to keep on with that discussion, but in a different realm, and now talking about churches and finances, giving, all of that fun stuff that you just spent a Sunday talking about to your congregation. What do you see, having just spent, hours researching, reviewing, studying this topic? What do you see as the challenges that small churches face when it comes to finances and congregational tithing?
So I don't, Jesus talked about tithing more than anything else. I mean, he talked about money, I should say, more than anything else that he talked about. He lived in this space where it was just a really complex kind of thing that I'm going, okay, why? And now we're sitting on this side of it, and we're, a couple thousand years away, and there still seems to be a struggle and tension. So there was something Jesus saw. Go back to Genesis, go back to Leviticus. There's something that God saw as he was speaking to the leaders back then, and they were sharing like the, tithing and giving, that there was something that they knew there was going to be this trend, even Malachi really speaks to that. Malachi 3 is a verse that gets used a lot. Paul especially continued that conversation after Jesus, ministry was finished in that season. And so I think that it's something that's really, really hard, because money just affects us so deeply. Like I said, Sunday, we talk about, and I know we're not the only ones, but churches talk a lot about time, talent, and treasure. And we're willing to give our time, but it's literally the one thing of the three that we cannot get more of. All of us have a limited number of that. We all get the same 24 hours in a day. Talents, there are people who work very hard on talents and sometimes get worse. I mean, I think I made the joke of, we all know the person who took voice lessons and they are now a worse singer than when they started. It's just not a talent. And so sometimes you just can't move that needle.
No matter how much your mama tells you.
Yes. Your mama can tell you you're great. You are not. Somebody needs to love you enough to tell you you're bad. But that is one of the hardest things. Parent goggles. Oh my goodness, it's so hard. And to be able to speak to my kids about things and not have parent goggles, but money is really the one of those three things that you can go earn more money. I'm not saying it's easy. I mean, just go get a side hustle and make 10 grand more a year. But I'm just looking at this and I'm going, how do we, you can earn more money, but yet money's the one thing that we kind of tend to hoard. I was listening to one pastor talk about this and reading some stuff. And he just said, he's like, you go to the Lord's Prayer and, give us today our daily bread. And he said, the tension for so many people is you never wake up and go, God, give us today our daily bread, because you've created no margin in your life that you're tithing and then generous, which I believe that's one tension, is that we've combined those words. And I don't think biblically they were meant to be combined the way that America does it anyway. And I think that space is we've not created any margin or tension in our life that we wake up and go, God, I am reliant on you today to provide for me. That's the kind of where I see some struggles and some tensions and, where I started at on Sunday.
So I think in the small churches that I've had the honor to work with and sit in and be a part of meetings with, I see one of two things. Either you have a small church that is really struggling financially, that they can't figure out, what do I have to do to get my people to understand that this is important and we can't function without this? And you've got churches that maybe have vision for things that they want to do. They have a great plan for things that they want to do to reach their community, to reach others with the gospel. And they just they can't even afford to pay their staff with their single staff person a full-time salary to get them there. They're just struggling because people are not giving. And then the other thing that I see quite a bit is churches that have hoarded their money. Small churches that we had one church that we worked with not too long ago that I definitely won't give the name because I was so amazed by this, that we're talking with the church and we had helped them develop a strategic plan. And then talking about how they were going to activate this plan and things that needed to be done. And they just kept talking about, we can't afford that. We can't afford that. We can't afford that. And finally, one of their leaders got frustrated and said, we have $300,000 sitting in our bank account right now. And I said, whoa, hold on. You what? And they said, yeah, we have it as our policy that we need to have a minimum of 3 years of operating budget in our banking account at all times, so that in the event that tithing dries up and we don't get another job, that we can keep the doors to the church open for the next 3 years. And I looked at them and I said, Jesus actually gives a parable about this, and you've just buried your money in the sand. And one of the leaders looked at me and said, no, actually we haven't. We have it in an interest-bearing checking account. And I said, okay, what are you getting in interest on that? Less than 1%, $300,000 that you're getting less than 1% interest. Okay, so you're number 2 of what Jesus talked about in there. Neither of the two were right. Only the one who invested into the kingdom was the one that he applauded for that. And so you didn't make yourself look any better by saying that. You're literally sitting. You could change your community with the money that you have there. You have three years of operating income sitting in your bank account, and it's been that way for how long? It's in our policies that we have to, so it's always been that way. And you're sitting here arguing that you don't have time to do something that's going to cost like $900 to meet a need in your community when you have $300,000. I was blown away by it. But I see those two things, that two different challenges that churches have. Either they don't have money at all to do the things, or they hoard their money. And I think they're both equally issues that we need to have. But first, before we dive into the church side of things, I want to talk about it from the individual side of things, and why the idea of being generous with our finances is such a difficult topic, even for Christians. I think it's talked about in churches, but it's talked about, we tend to, you said Malachi 3:10, we tend to use that verse a lot. We also use Matthew, we use Luke, but these verses get used by people that are preaching the prosperity gospel. And that if you give, God will give to you. If you give, he will open the floodgates and give back to you. If you bless others, you will be blessed. And those verses are so often taken out of context. And you and I don't know that we've ever really dove into this much that I am.
We've never dividend.
I'm still stuck on savings and investments. that I think the prosperity gospel is one of the most dangerous theologies that's out there. I don't know what you think. You might be exactly the opposite of that.
No, I would. It's scary. I mean, that people start, and I think the thing that's hard about it is a lot of times I've never seen anybody teach that from a perspective that they aren't benefiting from it, and so they're benefiting, but everybody else is struggling, right. And so it's that's always it's been my struggle. Yeah. So no, I'm not. I don't know that. I guess I'll say I don't think theologically that's a biblical approach to
the thing. I think we often miss in church leadership when communicating this with our congregations is that it quite literally is an act of worship.
Mm-hmm.
You know, our giving is an act of worship. We look at the tabernacle was created as the place for them to come and give their offering. The temple, its primary function was to come and give your offering. It was how you worshiped. And we've talked about this a little bit before. And I think you maybe even touched on it some the other day in your teaching, is that the norm now in church, in the church world and church structure, is that we've taken away the passing of the plate. We've taken away, we've made it easy because we don't want to offend people. We don't want people to feel uncomfortable with that moment. But going back to Gary Chapman's 5 love languages, the giving of gifts is a love language that 1/5 of the population, 1/5 of God's creation has as their love language. And so when we've taken those kind of moments out of our service for fear of offending someone, I think that we've taken that worship aspect out of it for what the corporate gathering of the body of Christ was originally. That's what the physical walls of the tabernacle, the temple, the church were created for. That this is a place for you to come and give your offering to God. And so I think that there are ways that we can do that are very worshipful and meaningful to people. And at the same time, it can be taken advantage of. And I don't even know what the word I'm looking for is. It can be diluted in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so I think that we've neglected teaching our people that this is a continuation of your worship. This is an act of worship. And you told a story on Sunday about a family that was so important to them that they made it a worshipful moment gathering around the computer and getting sent with their kids.
A friend of mine, he literally, when there was a plate, like it was easy to show his kids, like, hey, why do we pass a plate? Why do we pass a bucket? Well, here's why we do that. Here's what this is. Well, when that went away, he was like, we're going to lose these conversations. We're going to lose those moments. And so literally when online giving was getting started and stuff, and this has been almost 2 decades ago. I mean, it was this whole conversation around, we're doing this online. Here's why. Let's circle around. Let's talk about this over the computer. And, and then I'm going to use the word embellish. You make stories funny, and like they all put their finger on the mouse and 1, 2, 3, let's click together. But everything, the truth about that story, and I actually think he did that. I don't think I embellished anything. I'm 99% sure he did that, but it was very intentional in teaching that to his children. And, my mom, one day, and this has been years ago, we were getting something out of her Bible, and she and Dad had been sick, and they just weren't able to go to church. And there was literally 6 or 8 checks. Well, they were on retirement, so they got paid once a month. So this was 6 months of tithing checks that my mom had stored. And when that tithing check got written, it came out of the bank account. And if you looked at the bank account, that money was gone. Like, if you went on and looked online, of course, the money would have still been there, but she had been in the church. And so she, got those checks turned in. And literally when my dad passed away, she gave the pastor, who was the pastor at their church, like a love offering type thing, an honorarium. And then she handed him a stack of tithing checks at my dad's funeral. And I just thought that is a that has always been modeled. And I've seen moments and times when things didn't make sense work because of what I now understand to be faithfulness of what it is. And, we can talk about guys like, or families like George and Mary Mueller and their orphanage and what they were doing to care for kids, and the hundreds, I think it ended up being thousands of kids by the time before they passed away and stuff. And, and we hear the stories of people knocking on the door and they're praying for food that they don't have, and they're thanking God for provision. And somebody knocks on the door and is like, hey, my milk truck just broke down outside. The milk's going to go bad. Could you all use it? And they bring the milk in, and they're sitting there pouring milk, and the baker knocks on the door and says, I literally woke up in the middle of the night concerned. The Lord just put it on my heart that you all might not have food, and I'd like to give you all this bread. And they get bread and milk, and they get provided for, and they do. And I just, if I can just be really honest, I don't think we believe God will do that for us.
Yeah.
And so we are unwilling to live in a space where there's any margin, there's any gap. And then the tension comes, how do you have to live if you're going to live that way? So I'm going to step on my toes. I'm going to step on probably some people's toes that are listening. Do I have to quit travel sports with my kids? Like, can I really say, and let's just say you play for an absolutely local, no cost, almost travel team, and you're spending $500 a season, which you and I both know, Tony, like would be almost like playing for free. I mean, I have a friend right now that was looking at $3,000 a season for his kid to play. And that didn't include travel and hotels and all the other food and all the things that come with it. I mean, each season and 2 or 3 seasons a year would have ended up costing them $5,000 or $6,000 a season probably to do these trips. And so, like, do you have to give up some things to trust? And so, like, are we, in an effort to give our kids opportunities, I'm air quoting that, in an effort to do things to let our families be a part of society and the things that seem normal, do we have to give up some of those things and be different? Because can I really say I don't have, if I spend $500 3 times a year for my kid to play baseball or soccer or piano lessons? Or, I mean, I understand some of these things are fun. There's nothing inherently wrong. They're not unbiblical, immoral, unethical statements. I'm just wondering, do we have to change how we live? Or are we sitting here going, Lord, I just don't have, and the thing we don't have is an extra $1,000 to finish out the last month of travel ball season because we can't afford, 6 nights in hotels with, $100 meals per, 3 times a day, and A, B, C, and D on admission to the games and all that stuff. I just think our priorities out of order, and then we're mad at God for not providing for us. And we go, well, I got to get a second job, a third job. And how do I manage all of this stuff to be able to do? So I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think it's a heart thing. It really is a heart thing. Corinthians says, don't give out of compulsion or obligation, but give out of a cheerful heart.
Yeah.
And so if giving is something that is painful for you, I'm not sure that you're doing it in the right heart, that you're doing it out of obligation. So if it's, oh man, this is really going to hurt. I really don't know that I should do this. I really just, I don't know if I write this check to the church, I can't afford groceries this week. I'm not sure that you need to add that extra 0 onto your check. Maybe take that off. I don't think God's plan, as much as he said to the rich young ruler, sell everything that you have and give it to the church. I don't think that was about the money.
No, it was a heart issue for sure.
It was a hard issue. And I don't think that Jesus wants me and my wife with my 7 kids living under a bridge in downtown Johnson City and coming crawling out of a bush saying, hey, we gave all our money to the church. I don't think that's what he wants from us. He wants it to be a heart thing, that we're giving out of our generosity. We're giving out of the gratitude that we have for all that he's, knowing that everything has come from him. And I think that as a church, we too often teach it as this is something that is an obligation. This is something that we guilt people into. We need this instead of spending more time on the discipleship aspect of fall in love with Jesus. And when you fall in love with Jesus out of gratitude for all that he's done for you, you're going to graciously want to give because you're so thankful for all that has been done for you that you're going to want to give.
One of my favorite articles I read and kind of prepping for this past week was this guy just said, God is not nervously sitting in heaven, wringing his hands, laying off angels because you didn't tithe last week. God does not need your money. It is a chance for you to connect your heart to the Father. And I think that that's the thing for me is that, yeah, and I agree. I don't think God wants us sitting, like I think he wants us, putting ourselves in a space where we're living under, like you said, behind a bush or under a bridge and kind of going that way. And I'm not saying that people who are in those spaces have inherently done anything wrong. I think sometimes life hits and, people have good jobs and one day somebody walks in, buys a company, closes that company down and you're fired and you have nowhere to go. And maybe we're stretched a little thin, but you could have lived if life would have continued. And I understand things hit sometimes. And so I'm not saying anything wrong. I don't think that's what God wants for people. I do. And so I agree with you that he's, to give cheerfully, not nervously. I think the thing is, how do we train ourselves if it's a part of discipleship? So at that point in time, when you talk about spiritual disciplines, practices of Jesus, and you start looking at those things, and whether it's, tithing, generosity, giving in that space, or you're looking at, scripture reading, prayer, fasting, Sabbath. I mean, you start stepping through some of these things that Willard and Ortberg, Comer, Foster, all these leaders talk about inside of this conversation in these spaces. I'm going like the tension then seems to be is not that we shouldn't give, is how do we shift our heart to be generous, even though things. So, I mean, the question would be, if I tithe, and again, I think tithing and generosity are different. And here's what I mean by that. I think tithing is the baseline. I think it's the floor, not the ceiling of where we should start. And in our giving, we start in this space of tithing. I think it biblically runs to the local church starting. And I think generosity is above and beyond that space. And so if we're called to tithe at the baseline, and somebody's going, man, I don't think we planned on going here. So with I don't know if we'll delete this out or not, but if somebody's going, we don't eat tomorrow if I don't give, was George Mueller right? Or are we right in going, I'm going to keep my tithe to provide for myself, not trust and have my heart aligned to the Father and trust that he will provide for me. And I think that's the tension that I sit in sometimes with it. And, it's not my job to convince people. My job is to share truth, and the Holy Spirit works. Like we had somebody literally leave our church recently because they said, we want you to step on our toes. And I said, that's not my job. My job is not to be a toe stepper. And my job is to teach the scriptures, and the Holy Spirit will convict you. And that's the thing I would ask anybody that leaves my church, that somebody's church is listening or whatever. Are you leaving because of, like true theological differences? Or are you leaving because you're too lazy to follow Jesus? And it's just easier to go somewhere where they're not trying to hold you accountable to doing that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think that one of the mistakes that churches make, and we've touched on this a little bit, is making it more about the act rather than the result. And so we want to say, here's what you need to do rather than here's what we're doing. And we too often don't talk about what we're doing. The number of times that I had in ministry where someone would come to me, I'd have a meeting with someone who was new to our church, someone who was new to the church, period, and would say, so how does all this get paid for? The last church that I was full-time in, we had a dozen staff and a $1.8 million building and all this fancy stuff. And numerous times I had people that had come to the church for the first time that they'd been to church, maybe ever, definitely in years, and say, this is great. How do you guys pay for all this? I was like, well, you do, you do. And so I think that so often we get so focused on telling people, here's what you need to do, instead of here's what we're doing. And we're doing this because of what you did. It's a byproduct. It's a result, that instead of saying we need you to give, we have to have you give. It's saying we're able to do the things that we're doing, celebrate the things that we're doing. We're able to do this because of your giving. And it's not that you're giving just because it's something that is commanded, something that we're saying you have to do. And so you need to write that check, 10%, sit down with your budget, do it. But rather look at the incredible things that the Lord is doing through the people in the ministry of this church, this organization. Look at the amazing things that are happening. You can be a part of this. Here's how you can be a part of this. And I think that people, again, it's a heart thing, that seeing that this isn't just something that I'm doing out of obligation, but it's something that I'm doing out of a response to what is being done and has been done.
Yeah. I mean, like the other day, I mean, my family, we went and it was just 4 of us, and we went out and we were like, oh, let's get some ice cream. And so we landed at Minchie's, and I don't, Minchie's isn't necessarily my favorite place. It was just close, and it's where we landed at. And it's fine.
The problem with Minchie's, though, sorry to interrupt you. I love Minchie's. My kids love Minchie's. My wife loves Minchie's. The problem with Minchie's is that you get up to the front and you're paying $11 for one little thing of ice cream. Like, I could have gone and got a quart of this stuff. I could have gotten a gallon of this for a third of the price and eaten it.
And I'll tell you, a lot of times
you're paying for the experience.
We end up at a Kroger or place like that, and everybody goes in and gets a Ben and Jerry's or something like that, like a pint of stuff, and you eat on it for a couple of days sometimes. I mean, it's just. I agree 100%.
Sorry, another rabbit hole. Finish your thought.
No. But I mean, it was $40 for
my point exactly.
4 of us to get ice cream. And I just mentally, sometimes I'm just not there anymore to where I'm going, oh, this is going to be, and maybe it was wrong with $25 as well, but things have increased so much. And I remember sitting there just going, I don't think this was a good steward of our money. And I'm not saying it was wrong to get ice cream. I'm saying that my boys would have been just as happy with us going to Sam's Club and getting $1 ice cream.
Oh man.
Or going to
Brownie Sunday,
going to Kroger and saying,
$1.25.
hey, we're going to get 3 different types. And we've got one kid that has a dietary. He has Crohn's. And so we have to be very careful. He has to have very specific ice creams and things like that. And so like we can get him his stuff, and then we could get a couple of other ice creams, like you said, the big ones. And then we could walk through and we could get toppings and M&Ms and magic shell and hot fudge and caramel. And we could have gotten all the things for half. And so, like, I look at things from a fact of that. I don't know that I'm robbing my boys of some amazing experience by going to Minchie's.
Here's my pushback on you.
Yeah, go for it.
And I think it ties directly into what I was trying to say with my last point. Is my daughter had her birthday last week and a half ago, and she wanted to go to Minchie's. Mm-hmm. We went to Minchie's, and when we were done, we sat down at a table there. Okay. Now, it would have been very easy for us just to take it to go, sit in the car. They eat it in the car with their AirPods in their ears. But I said, no, we just paid $30 for 3 of us to get ice cream. We're sitting down and having an experience. This is a time where we're sitting at a table, we're laughing, we're sharing stories, we're singing happy birthday to McKenna in front of everyone there, and everyone's turning and looking, and then they all clap for her. And it was a moment. The investment wasn't in the ice cream. The investment was in the moment. It was in the time spent. And with our giving, so often we make it just about the money instead of saying, here's the moment that your money provided. I think we've talked about this so many times before that our listeners are going to be like, Tony, stop saying it. I think every single Sunday, every single time, the church should be celebrating something that's going on, that people can see, here's what I'm behind. Here's what I'm a part of. And even if I'm not, man, I want to be a part of that. I hear the stories. I see the videos. I hear the testimonies of the life change that is happening, the things that are happening in our community, the way that we're impacting people's lives for the sake of the gospel and in the name of Jesus. And man, I want to be a part of that. I see everyone wants to be a part of something like that. The problem is, and I think the reason that so many churches are struggling financially and they're dying is because they're not doing anything. There aren't any stories to share. And so people are saying, why would I give my money to something that's dying? Share the stories of the great. That should happen every single time that you're getting together, that you're sharing the stories, so that people say, I'm investing into something. I'm investing into an experience. I'm investing into life change. I will pay $30 for ice cream when I know that what it's going to get me is 45 minutes uninterrupted with my kids to sit at a table and tell stories and laugh and let my daughter know how loved she is and hear about the greatest moment of her life in the last year. What was the most special thing for the last year? I'm not paying. I don't feel like it's a good investment. When I walk away from that moment, I'm $30 well spent, had nothing at all to do with the ice cream. I would pay the $30 to go and have the 45 minutes to sit there with my kids uninterrupted and have their undivided attention, and they have mine. It's not worth the $30 when we're just getting into a car, headphones are popping in, we're not having any discussion, they're eating their ice cream, and then it's getting thrown away when we're done, and there's nothing that happens relationally, experientially that comes out of that. And so I think so often for people, when they see the tithing in the church, it's just transactional. It's just, I'm doing it online. Boom. I don't ever see the results of what happens to this, what's being done with this outside of what I see happening on Sunday morning. But when they can see, man, I'm a part of something. I'm a part of something that's changing lives. I'm a part of something that's impacting people. I'm a part of something that's spreading the gospel. Then I think you'll begin to see that generosity uptick and people getting behind what you're doing if they know that what you're doing and you're doing something.
So two things. One, if like anyone who gets in their car with Minchies and eats it on the road is just weird. Like, I think that's the whole purpose of those places, is to go in and sit down and eat ice cream. If I'm doing that in the car, I'm literally just going to go to Kroger and get it and take it home. So I'm like,
you just offended so many people.
I don't care. It's so weird. Eating ice cream in the car is weird. Like even Dairy Queen and like getting the cones or something like that and going through a drive-through. I'm like, no, we're going to go in, we're going to sit down. It's all the things, but yeah, no, like I think actually for me, a lot of times, like we create those spaces and those moments. And like, so when we head back to our house, we don't all just get ice cream and go sit somewhere. Like we rally around. I mean, let's rally around the table and everybody's got their ice creams and it's conversations and those types of things. And it's actually that space for me that there's not the traffic, there's not the people, there's not all the movement, there's not all the stuff, there's no pressure. And I'm a person, and this is just my personality. Don't care if it's somebody else's or not. It's just who I am. If some place gets busy, I feel a pressure to leave, to make space for something else. And there are people who do not feel that. They're like, I was here. You can all stick it. And I do not care. I don't care if you have to stand, go get in your car. I don't care if you have to go to the restaurant next door and get whatever so you can sit there and eat your ice cream. But I'm a person that like, I feel a tension that if things start to get busy, let's take this to our house. Let's take this somewhere else. Let's go do this and kind of make that happen. And so I like the fact of that when I'm sitting around our table at home, and we're doing that I don't ever, no one's coming in and running me out of my own table, and sitting in those spaces, and I can kind of control those environments and that kind of stuff. So it's something
we have to really be intentional about. And Amanda and I generally do a really good job of that. There's a lot that we don't do well in parenting. But that's one thing that we do generally do well is we say, no, we're all sitting down at the table together and eating dinner. And we have questions that we ask, that the kids come up with. And it's a different, crazy, bizarre question, almost every time that we sit down to eat. And it's one of the things that in talking with my daughter, who we're taking in 2 days to college, that said, she said, I'm going to miss sitting down at this table and family dinners.
FaceTime her in. Venmo her some money, FaceTime her in, go get your dinner and let's go.
So we do that pretty well.
Yeah.
We do. There's still,
by the way, I don't fail at any parenting thing. It's good though that you do to help everyone else kind of, a lot. It's good that you can make everybody else feel, mine's so perfect and yours is not there. So yeah.
And so I do want to say we do that. That's an important value to us. But there are lots of times, probably once or twice a week even, that life is busy and it's been long, and we say, everyone just sit around and eat. And so we've got a like bar area in our house that, kids will sit there. Some will sit on the couch. Some will sit in the formal living room. Some will go and sit. Kenna will usually go and sit at the table because she loves that. And she wishes every time we just went and sat at the table as a family. The other night, we were talking, what do we want to do for dinner? And I said, I want to go to an old fashioned pizza parlor. And, we could easily just order Little Caesars, save a ton of money, but I wanted that experience of sitting down in a place with our kids, having their undivided attention. And so it took us a while to find one.
I bet it did.
And we went and found an incredible place that we spent probably 5 times what we would have spent if we'd have just ordered Papa John's. But it was wonderful. It was a wonderful evening that ended up where dinner might normally take 30, 45 minutes. Dinner took an hour and a half, 2 hours, because we placed our order. We sat at the table waiting for it to come, and we just talked. We shared life together, and we caught up on things from what had been a crazy week. And again, it was an investment that I was willing to make, not because the pizza was any better than Domino's, but because
Domino's is so garbage. I hate Domino's so much. Anything's better than Domino's.
Best pizza in the area is Sam's Club pizza. It really is. Sam's Club is phenomenal.
It's good. It's fine. I don't know that it's the best pizza in the area, but yeah.
If you're ever visiting Tri-Cities and you're a listener of the Small Church Podcast, where would you recommend they go for pizza?
Maybe Rocky's.
Rocky's is really good.
Rocky's has really good pizza that I think is a step above.
Rocky's is good.
I'll
give you that. Rocky's is really good.
Bella Vita's.
Don't know that I've
experienced right next to Mellow Mushroom. It's more of a thin style New York slice type of place.
That's my thing. The New York style.
I am a Chicago deep dish type person, and that I love. And there's not a good deep dish place around here at all.
Yeah, I'm more the New York style. I love Sbarro. When they took Sbarro out of the mall,
it's just so crazy.
Man, I was done with the mall.
Yeah. That. And so I think those two.
But yeah, all of that to say that I was willing to make that investment, happy to make that investment, because I knew that it was an investment, and I was willing to pay the price because I knew that it was an investment into something.
Yeah.
Could have gotten better pizza for a whole lot cheaper somewhere else and just had it delivered or done pickup. But
so I think there's two. So one, I think there's two things to that, maybe three. One, I would say I hope that people hear how much we value time with our family. And if you're a pastor, and life is crazy, and just being really transparent, I do side projects, do graphic design work, and I'm sitting in the middle of Adobe InDesign right now for the last 2 weeks. And I had this deadline that was coming up, and my oldest just came in, and we sat, and Melissa and I had started a movie, Runaway Bride, and I was just working with mindless stuff in the background. And she left, and he came in and sat down. I was like, "What are you watching?" I told him. He's like, "I love a good rom-com. Here we go." And then when it went off, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days popped up, and he sat down. We just started watching. It was after midnight, and we both went hey, we need to go to bed. And we cut it off. And so I love that time with my family. I love sitting in that space, and I can get really busy and sometimes go, oh man, but those moments of just getting some space and getting some time and going and hanging out. The ice cream thing and all that stuff, sometimes it is weird when we've got a kid with real tight dietary concerns. So sometimes we just have to go to Kroger and go home. So I'm there.
So you said 3 things. You said you've got 3 things.
That was one.
You've got 2 things left. We're going to save those because we are out of time right now. And so we need to put a wrap on this, and you save those. It took us 4 weeks to get to this topic, and so it's only fitting that it's going to take us a couple weeks to tackle this. So we're going to go ahead and end this episode of the Small Church Podcast, part 1 of who knows how many parts on tithing and generosity within the church. And we hope that you've enjoyed this. Again, we want to thank you for listening to this edition of the Small Church Podcast. If you have any ideas or thoughts that you would like to chime in on this conversation, any practical tips for other small church leaders on how they can increase generosity and tithing in their congregations and get more behind their people in that, we would love to hear that from you. You can find us at higherministries.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, Higher Ministries, and you can join the conversation. We also want to encourage you, remind you to subscribe and like our podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And one more time, as we said at the beginning, we would love for you to partner with us in the All for One campaign. 100 people, one-time gift of $100. And you can find out more about that and join in that journey at higherministries.com. Again, we hope that you have a great rest of the week. We look forward to continuing this conversation with you next week on the Small Church Podcast.